Today we return to the twisted world of Neil Gibson and have a look at the dark side of humanity. We're in for an anthology of stories where not everybody gets their happily ever after. This is Twisted Dark, Volume 2. Hello there, Comic Clan, and welcome to Comics of the Cross, the greatest YouTubers that you've never heard of. I, of course, am your host for today, Cross, and today we are checking out Twisted Dark Volume 2. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. It may be nearing the end of October as this is releasing. If you're checking it out after the fact as well, welcome on in. Thank you for checking out some of our other stuff, but it is nearing the end of October when this drops, and we have still got a lot of spooky content dropping here on the channel for what I am now affectionately titling Cross-tober. Yes, I realise that it's like a week until October's over, and we're almost at the end of the Cross-tober content, but everyone seemed to have a special name for their October, like, spooky stuff, and I wanted to name something for the channel. So I've retroactively gone back and fixed a lot of the thumbnails so that it says Cross-tober, and the backgrounds for the videos in future will all be Cross-tober stuff when it comes to Halloween, because we are delving into all the spooky stuff. So if you've missed out on it, we now have a playlist with all of the Cross-tober stuff, including our previous reviews and our interview with the man himself, Neil Gibson, who wrote the Twisted Dark series. I'll put a card for that up in the corner, so please go and check that out as well. So yeah, go and check out all of our Cross-tober stuff. If horror comics and the horror stuff is your bang, if that's what you are all about, then we've got a good little catalogue of that building up for you. But today we're going to delve into Twisted Dark, but before we do that, if you're enjoying the content here at Comics in the Cross, please head down below and go and hit that subscribe button. Show your support for the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. And if you can hit that like button as well, it really does help us out. We appreciate that. And also as well, if you want to support the channel more and get early access to all of these videos, for our reviews, our Let's Talk Comics, where we talk with comic book creators, and our Indie Comic Book Club that we have once a month, then you can head on over to our Patreon. The link is down below. For just $2 a month, you get early access to all of that. But all of that will eventually come to YouTube if you're not able to support us there. I absolutely get it, but if you want that and a few little extras, then that option is available too. But enough of me waffling on. Let's dive on in to the twisted world of Twisted Dark Volume 2. Twisted Dark Volume 2 is an anthology horror series written and created by Neil Gibson with lettering from Jim Campbell. The artwork is from a number of contributing artists, including Marc, Olivent, Arjit, Dutta, Chowdhury, Atula, Siriwardane, Hugo, Wijngaard, Caspar, Wijngaard, Marc, Martel, Heru, Prasetyo, Djalal, and Antonio, Balanquit Jr. Before we get started, I do want to say that this is an anthology volume, a full trade paperback, so I will not be able to cover every single story that is within it, otherwise this would be like an hour-long video. If you guys are interested in me doing that, please let me know down below, but I'm going to be covering 4 out of the 9 stories that take place in Volume 2 of Twisted Dark. Also as well, appearing up on your screen right now should be a warning for trigger warning that do appear within this book. I don't want to say them out loud because it'll throw off the YouTube algorithm, but this is a mature book and has a lot of content that could be very triggering for a lot of people. If this is too much for you or something that you don't want to see, 100%, that is absolutely fine. Not everybody is comfortable with some of this stuff, with some of this content. If it's not, I hope you'll stick around and see us in the next video that drops from here. By all means, miss out on this one. But if you see all those triggers up on the screen and you are good to go and you're okay with that content being mentioned, being talked about, I'm not going to show anything in graphic detail. And not all of those triggers are going to appear in this video, but they are triggers that do appear within the volume. So I wanted to put those up there. But if you are all good with that, if we are ready to go, we are going to delve into Twisted Dark. And our first story is called Legacy. In Legacy, we join a famous artist named Hans. He is working hard in his study, and he is working on his next piece when his friend comes to call. Hans is a very successful artist whose paintings sell for tens of thousands of dollars. But he says that it's just a fad right now. It could all disappear in an instant. His friend Ubel comes to visit, and Ubel shows him what he means by this, by throwing together a bunch of colours on a canvas and just paints anything random that comes to his mind. And then says, look, this is utter trash. This has got no artistic merit, no passion behind it. But right now it would sell as much as any of his good works. Hans wants everything that he creates to be great. And more than anything else, he wants to leave behind an amazing legacy. But he asks Ubel if he will be his editor and help him go through his pieces as he paints them, because right now he feels like he's lost perspective on what's good and what isn't. And the pressure of producing this work is really starting to get to him. Ubel tells him to relax and pours him a brandy. They drink together, and Ubel confirms that Hans would do anything for his work to be remembered. And Hans says that he would gladly endure a lifetime of misery for his work to last forever. Ubel tells Hans that he's an amazing artist and knows what makes good art. Says he can vet his own work and choose pieces that he thinks are good and leave the rest to the side. Then from there, he'll make any further cuts that Hans wants and make sure that they meet his usual standard. Ubel sets Hans back to work and leaves his friend to it. But upon Ubel's leaving of the studio, he makes a phone call. We don't see who he's speaking to, but whoever he's talking with, he tells them that Hans's work has reached the peak of its popularity, and now Hans's ability is starting to dwindle. So maybe poisoning with alcohol isn't enough anymore. Maybe they truly need to actually poison him. The epilogue of this story tells us that some artists take years to reach their peak, while others peak early and then lose their ability. But Hans never had that issue. With his work being popular and selling for thousands, then doubling in price upon his death. While he had been alive, Ubel took a select few pieces Hans had and placed them into storage. Then, following his death, they were released and placed in galleries as unseen work, along with hours of video footage of Hans creating his art. Ubel then opened an art school and trust in Hans's name to help aspiring artists around the world. Hans wanted a legacy that would outlast him, and his friend Ubel made sure that Hans would never be forgotten. What an interesting story to kick off our anthology, and is actually the first story in this anthology, A Look at Legacy. It's an interesting little dark turn on it. You know, it's not as dark as some of the other stories that we've seen in Twisted Dark, and certainly not as dark as some of the other stories that are coming up in the anthology. But a look at an artist who wanted to be great more than anything, wanted to be remembered and have a legacy more than anything, to last and be forever among the great artists of the world and not just be a fad that would disappear. And his friend ensured that he would, even making sure that that's exactly what he wanted, was that he would die happy knowing his work would live forever. And his friend gave it to him. Is that a happy ending? He got exactly what he wanted, but I'll let you be the judge of that one. Time to jump into our second story for today. This one is called Smile. And massive trigger warning for this. Of all the big trigger warnings that came up at the start, this is the major trigger warning for the stories I'm covering today. Trigger warning for child harm, child death and child murder. If those are massive things for you, then this is not a story to listen to. And apologies for it. Honestly, as a father, it's a hard story for me to read. Anything with harm to kids is a hard story to read, but as a comic reviewer, I want to cover this because it is one of the larger stories within the anthology. It takes up a good chunk of time, and sometimes it's worthwhile discussing the things that we find uncomfortable and looking at the stories that take place and looking at what they make us feel and how they make us process stuff. So I personally felt like it was important to include this and to discuss it. But if that's something that you're not capable of doing, no issues held against you. You can bow out of this story, but if you're ready to jump in, let's have a look at Smile. We join Helen Bichelle as she's being interviewed by a police detective. She tells the detective that she will tell him her whole story, but that she isn't going to start with the murder. She's going to start with when she was 14, and when she met and fell in love with Derek O'Malley, her teacher. Helen grew up in a small Catholic community. Life was very dull and very boring, so a young good-looking teacher seemed like something that was very exciting to her. She was completely enamored with him, with everything about him, but most of all, she was enamored with his smile. Helen was falling for Derek, although he didn't show any interest back. Helen did fantasize and imagine what it would be like if he did, though. She did well in his class just to get his attention, and got detention on days when he would be supervising. She also decided to go for a history scholarship and get further tutoring from Derek. She kept flirting and trying to advance the relationship, but he kept shutting it down, until eventually the tension grew too much, and they kissed. Derek told her, "This can't happen again. He's married and she's his student. This was a mistake and it should never have happened." But it wasn't the last time. As they kissed again and again and again, and each time that would happen, he would say that it was a mistake, but there always seemed to be a next time. Then everything changed when Helen became pregnant. Derek's initial reaction is that she had to have an abortion. Helen told him that no, she's Catholic, there's some things that she's just not willing to do. He then tells her that he loves her, but his wife is also pregnant right now and he can't just walk away from her. And she also has to keep quiet about him being the father, because if anyone finds out, then he's going to go to jail. She willingly went along with what he asked. Never told a soul. Helen's parents obviously found out that she was pregnant, and they moved her away, out of the city, out of the state. She never told her secret though. She did try to stay in touch with Derek, however, but conversations were minimal to non-existent. He wasn't there for the birth of his son, missed the first few years of his life, but he did agree to meet with Helen and her son once she turned 18. They met at a park near her old school, but Derek came with someone. He came with his wife, and weirdly there was no child to be seen. But Derek smiled and Helen let go of all the issues and resentment. The same smile that had made her fall in love and go along with everything that he'd asked her to do through all the years. She watched as Derek played with their son, the two men she cared about most in the world with their matching smiles, and she kept her secret and never let on how she really felt, or told his wife about them being together. But as they said their goodbyes, something changed. That charming smile that had won her over for so long all of a sudden seemed to change and morph into a smug smile Like a kid that had just gotten away with something that they didn't think they were going to. And Helen realised that she had been used for all these years. She had been used by Derek, and that smile lost all of its charm on her. Helen now felt hatred for that smile. Derek's smile, the one that was shared with their son. So Helen took their son by the water to see the ducks and convinced him to go into the water to try and pet them. Once there, she pushed his head underwater and held him there until his body was motionless and lifeless. When she was asked by the detective why she killed him, she told the detective that she couldn't stand seeing that smile. And when Derek hears the news, it's likely that he will never smile again. I've read that story a couple of times now, and even sitting here recording it, it's hitting me again. It's a rough story to get through. Without a doubt, the darkest story in this anthology. In this volume of Twisted Dark, this is the darkest one. Like I said, there's something about child harm and child death that, since I became a father, it hits different, and I can handle it as well. Like a parent not being a good parent and doing something to their child like that just hits me in a different way than it used to before I was a parent. So the death of the child at the end of this story definitely hits hard. But it's one of those stories that we see all the time in media, we see all the time coverage in so many different genres, so many different avenues, especially like this. You're watching me here on YouTube, it's like any sort of media like this, any sort of media coverage anywhere of anything has got so many stories and allegations of abuse that come out. So many imbalanced power dynamics, so many people taking advantage of kids and young teens in these situations. And that was something that we see it everywhere. We almost become numb to it, but need to remember that it is something that happens, and it's something that's not okay. And this one led to the death of a child. And it's okay that it's uncomfortable. It's okay that it doesn't sit right with you if you're feeling, like your back's crawling, you feel like it doesn't, no, that's not an okay thing. It's like, good, it's not meant to be. Not every bit of the media we consume in any genre does that. Like, people talk about movies that make you feel like that. People talk about books that can make you feel like that. Comics are another expression of that art form. They tell stories that we're not always comfortable with, but is it so wrong to read something that makes you think and ponder and wonder and analyse the world? And opens you up to realising that there are darker sides of things. They make you question certain things. And I felt this was an important one to cover. I felt this was an important one to talk about. I've been recording this and piecing it together through the night. I did start the video off saying that we were going to cover 4 stories. I'm looking right now at the running length of the video, and it's like it's running for a lot longer than I was expecting it to, 2 stories deep. So I'm actually going to cut out one of them. And I'm going to jump to the final story that I was going to cover. And that was one I felt like I really enjoyed, that really hit some good dark tones, and I'm like, I feel like that's one I want to include. So we are going to be missing out the next story, that we had planned, and I'm going to be jumping into our final story for the video, and the story that wraps up volume 2 as well. This is Popular. We meet a beautiful young woman named Hannah. She is absolutely stunning. So stunning that people that she meets just can't help but admire her. Her beauty brought her popularity in school. It got her a lot of attention and a lot of jealousy. But all of that was so effortless for her, and she never had to work hard for anything. Hannah wasn't a particularly smart person. She wasn't really sporty or artsy. Her social skills left a little bit to be desired. Okay, a lot to be desired. She didn't really have much of a ability for anything, any passion for much, and if we're being completely honest, she didn't really have much of a personality either. She did have her looks, which helped her to mask a lot of those things because people just liked to be around her. And she had her popularity. So she strived to be as popular as she possibly could be. She had a blog, posted regularly on social media, and accepted every and all friend requests and follow that she ever received. She may not remember everyone's name that she has added, but what truly mattered is that they all knew her name. Hannah graduated university with no real drive or ambition to do anything. She was bankrolled by her father, so she never had to really work or try and achieve anything, but it meant she could put all of her effort into the thing that was most important to her: flirting and making friends with people so that she could become more popular. Every week, Hannah checked to see the new pictures that she had been tagged in, and made sure to comment so that she would encourage others to post pictures of her and tag her as well. This week though, she was tagged by a random account on Facebook, who posted an old picture of her from a few years ago. She thought nothing of it and started getting tagged every couple of weeks in older photos from this person. Hannah just assumed that it was an old university friend or something. Hannah started to become concerned though when the pictures started showing up from more recent events. And then pictures started showing up of her sitting alone, out in public, at a cafe, and at different places, all on her own with no one around that she knew. Hannah decided to look into the pictures on the profile in hopes of seeing mutual friends and working out who this person was. But to her horror, all the pictures on there were of her. She made the call to do something that she had never done before. She removed them as a friend. After blocking the person on Facebook, Hannah spoke to one of her lawyer friends. Well, one of her lawyer friends, as it was on her contact list. They told her, unfortunately, there was no legal action that could be taken. They hadn't actually done anything illegal. All they'd done is tag her in some pictures. So Hannah thought nothing more of it at that point until multiple accounts started posting pictures and started tagging her just like that one. This was clearly a mass effort from an individual or group of individuals who had been planning this out. Hannah started to become so paranoid. Out in public, she was paranoid of smartphones. She started taking notes of everything around her and everything that she was looking at. But all of that seemed to pale in comparison when the most terrifying picture was posted. One of her in her own home from the night before, taken through her window. Hannah resolved to go stay with her father, but couldn't help herself. She had to go and check her tagged pictures one last time. The latest batch were all of her taken from inside her home. Then, all of a sudden, a new notification dinged for her to check. Hannah clicked on the notification and clicked on the newly tagged picture. And to her utter horror and distress, the picture was of her, right now, sitting at her computer, taken from behind her. I absolutely love this story. First thing that pops into my head for this one is it 100% brings up memories of the old creepypastas from the internet. There's definite stories, like even the image of Hannah getting the picture taken from behind her. it brought up memories of an old creepypasta that I remember of a guy getting DMs from his dead girlfriend's Facebook account of her saying that he'd left her and that she was cold and needed to be warmed, and then pictures start coming in of her, from the account taken from outside his home, and then the last one is of him right now looking at his laptop taken from the hallway just next to him through the door. That was the picture that came to my head when I was kind of reading the pictures thing, especially with that last shot, because it's such an easy fear to play on in a story, but it's done so well here. That fear of being stalked, that fear of being helpless, that fear of being defenseless of what do you do? It's they've not, the lawyer friend even said, there's nothing you can do. They're not doing anything illegal. They're just tagging you in pictures. And then all of a sudden, it's becoming more and more terrifying and more worrying to the point of it's nothing dangerous or illegal until it is. And it's another one of these great stories that's so simplistic, but it also gets you thinking. And I think as well, it definitely brings up a lot of stuff in my mind as a man, because it's something I don't always think about and don't always have to worry about, is the stalking aspect of someone being so obsessed with me that it becomes a danger to me. That's something that I would hear my wife talk about, or something that I would hear women I know speaking on that I can't fully relate to. But to have it laid out like this and seeing the danger and how simply and quickly it can go from something so simple not really to be worried about, it's not a major thing, to all of a sudden becoming a hazardous issue that's a danger to them in their lives. It's such a really interesting thing. And as well as that, it's also a great conversation on that online security and being careful on, going on social media and different things like that, because it's so easy, especially for young people today. They're growing up in that social media culture, that TikTok culture, that culture of get more views, get more likes, get more people to pay attention to you, more people to like you. And, not that that's necessarily a bad thing completely. He says, as a YouTuber looking for people to subscribe to his channel, it's I can't say it's fully a bad thing, because here I am doing something very similar. But it's that thing of you have to also be smart online, because it can become very dangerous very quickly, And that's me growing up as a kid in the 90s and the early 2000s, when the internet was literally a wild west. There wasn't these protections. We didn't know to be smarter about how we were doing certain things, and these certain connections we were making and certain chat rooms we were going in. Kids today have got the opportunity to become so tech savvy and internet smart that we didn't have as kids, but it doesn't mean it's not still a danger. So I think this was a really great story. These were 3 of my favourite stories from Volume 2 of Twisted Dark. These were the 3 that really stood out to me. There was other great stories in here, other phenomenal stories. So definitely go pick up the trade for yourself. Like I said, I've covered 3, so I've covered a third of the stories in here. There's an entire double the amount of what I've already talked about that is in this book alone, let alone all the other volumes of Twisted Dark. And Twisted Dark's becoming a new kind of horror favourite of mine in the comic world, just because of the darker stories. If you're not in for the super darker stories, weirdly he says in the book that he's already warned people about, child murder. This one is actually less dark, I feel, than Volume 1. And there was a note that with the book, I think it was a kind of prologue that was put in there by Neil, saying that basically he took back feedback from Twisted Dark Volume 1, and he heard from a lot of people that it was too dark, there was too much kind of heavy stuff in it, which personally I liked the stories there. I don't know what that says about me, but I enjoyed them. I enjoyed that kind of dark twist on stuff, that dark view of things. I enjoy that make you think sort of mentality where not everything ends with a bow on top, you know. I don't know why, but I enjoy that stuff. So I was a little sad to see it toned down for volume 2. But if that's something that was too much for you in the first volume, then, you know, go and check out the first volume if you haven't already. And go check out our review of it. But this is definitely something that is a much easier entryway, and a lot of these stories are a lot more straightforward, not quite as dark ending to it, but I will forewarn, if you go further than volume 2 into volume 3 and beyond, excuse me, Neil has mentioned that he does start to get darker again. He does kind of go back against the grain and does the darker take on stuff, and I think he's found his niche. I think he's found a great little niche for doing that, and for telling these great dark twisted horror stories that aren't necessarily out there. Excuse me, sorry, I'm burping like crazy. I have got something going on in my gut, and like I am got a little bit of gas, so I apologise for that. But I absolutely adore Twisted Dark. I am really enjoying this series. I'm enjoying doing this. I will put the links down below to go and pick up Twisted Dark Volume 2 for yourself if you want to go and check it out, if you want to go and pick it up. I think you absolutely should go and check out our interview with Neil Gibson. The guy is an absolute legend, and it's worth chatting with him, and we got a lot of comic book creator talk out of him and how to make your own comics. So absolutely phenomenal interview with him as well, so please go check that. But I think that's it for me for today. Thank you for joining me for Cross-tober. We will have one more Cross-tober horror comic review dropping next week. The plan is to drop it on Halloween. We'll see if that actually gets to happen, but that is the plan, that it will be dropping on Halloween morning as the wrap up to Cross-tober. So make sure you subscribe and like so that you don't miss out when that video drops, and more great content coming from us in the future as well. Also as well, you'll see below me as well, please go and check out BCW, bcwsupplies.com. Our link is down below to click on, and you can use code ComicsCross to save 10% on your purchases. Click on the link and use that code, and it will kick some money back to Comics the Cross as well as getting you all of your comic book collection supplies, you know, which we all need as comic book collectors. If you're like me, you need those supplies. So go and save a little bit of money on it, and if to help support the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. But that's all for today. I hope you've had an absolutely amazing time with us. Hope you have an absolutely amazing week ahead. And remember, it's a good week to be a geek. Take care. I'll see you all soon. Peace.